The Solus Project, sometimes just known as Solus, like here in the trophy list on the PlayStation 4. Solus, or Solus, however you want to pronounce it, is a combination of genres. It kinda has elements of adventure, horror, puzzle, survival, and you know, one of those kind of games where the story is just like sort of told through notes, so you like stand around reading loads of stuff. I don't really know how to classify that kind of thing. Walking sim, maybe? Similar to that kind of stuff. Anyway, you play as Mr. or Miss Sken, depending on the character you choose in the beginning, but who you pick actually has no bearing on the story, other than the voice lines that occur, as far as I could tell anyway, but you never know, perhaps something does change through the game. I'll leave that down to you to discover. So the game starts off with you getting mega bomboed in space, and you crash land on an alien planet. Alien may be the key word here. Spoilers. Once you land, you gotta survive. Obviously there's more to do other than just survive, but survival is kind of the focal point, otherwise you're not really going to get anything else done, are you? Now initially you might draw some similarities to the game Subnautica, like I did, and yeah, there are some, but Solus focuses a lot less on the crafting aspect that these type of games usually go for, and it kind of goes for, you see, I hesitate to say a realistic style, but I guess that is the word, realistic, in a sense. This brings me perfectly around to Wilson. In the bottom left hand corner is Wilson. Wilson is your only means of communication with anyone, although usually just yourself, because there's no one else on the island. Spoilers, but also Wilson is your heads-up display, so they're going to have all the crucial information you need to know, such as current health, body temperature, calories, liquid, sleep, surrounding temperature, the wetness percentage, otherwise known as how wet you might be, oi oi, and the windage. Now a lot of that might seem superfluous, like you might think, why would I care about some wet wind, mate? Well, let me tell you, Mr. Invented Scenario to suit my narrative purposes man. It's because, throwing it back to when I said realistic in those aural quotation fingers, if you're piss wet through and it's proper mad windy, mate, and it's also cold, you're gonna get sick and die. Hypothermia is a bit of a bitch. Whereas, if you're wet but the wind is warm, you may yet live, or potentially get heat stroke, which will in turn make you sick, and then you will die. Ah, you see, it's very nuanced. I may be delving quite deep into spoiler territory here, so if you just want to know how I feel about the game, I think it's pretty good. Got a few problems with it, ultimately, pretty good though. There's your review. However, I have more to say. So, spoilers, kind of, possibly, maybe, from here on in. In Solus, you will never fight a single enemy. You'll find things that look a bit like enemies, and things that look like weapons, but you won't be killing anything. Now for me, that's a little bit of a negative. Don't give me a sword, or a shield, or a hammer, if you don't expect me to kill anything. I have to use those things for murder. This is what games have taught me. Come on now. Your main enemy is going to be the environment. Now perhaps there is a message in there somewhere. Yeah, but I'm not looking for it. Let me tell you about some stuff that I liked. Now I'm a big fan of horror, especially the subtle type of horror. You know, the horror that lurks in the corner of your eyes and hides just out of sight. The kind of horror that doesn't outright leap in front of you and much more prefers to watch you from a distance. Perhaps just waiting for the perfect moment when your guard is down. Maybe when you're asleep, or when you're in the shower and the soap just gets into your eyes and you're blinded for a small amount of time. Or perhaps when you're at your most vulnerable. When you're on the toilet. You turn around and you see some little doll things. I kind of like them, and I wish I could actually keep a couple of them for the journey. Perhaps maybe if they ever make a Solus Project 2, they might include that as a sort of additional thing. Yes, please. Another thing that I like is the collectibles. Well, that's kind of a double-edged sword, but we'll get to that. Most collectibles in a lot of games are useless. They do nothing. You just pick them up and that's it. Well done. In the Solus Project, however, every collectible will buff your character in some way. Now, be that resistances to certain ailments or just buffs to health and speed, whatever it might be. It's very useful, and it's nice that they actually give you something for every single collectible. Not every 10 or every 50 or just none at all. You actually get something, so it is worth seeking them out, and that's something I'm quite pleased about. As a trophy hunter, as a person who collects everything in the game, usually, that is something that is very nice. Thank you. You see, normally I hate collectibles in general, but because these give you a little bit of a reward, I hate them a little bit less. Not much less though. Finally, you have this cool teleporter thing that can be used to glitch the game. Hey. But it's also useful for travelling around. But mostly for glitching. Oh yeah. Now let's just talk about the bad stuff. Of course, I'm going to be honest here. In fact, no, I'm going to just straight up lie. Because why not? It's hilarious, right? Now, of course, I'll be serious-ish. Personally, I would like to be able to actually craft. You see, in the game, there's tools, there's materials, and yet you barely can craft anything at all. I only ever crafted 2 things in my playthroughs, and that was a torch and a hammer, both of which are basically required to progress through the game. You have all these things around in the game, like rocks and wires and oil and roots and plants and things like that. And really, you never even need to touch them. As a person who enjoys combining things together to make something else, it is kind of a shot to the heart, you know? And you're to blame. You give crafting a bad name. So what I'm saying is I'd like to craft, but that is not in the game. And that's fine. That's fine as a feature or non-feature, but there are things that you can craft. So it's very bare bones. Now I'm going to bunch this into one since it actually encompasses a lot of the game in a way, and that would be the speed, or I should say lack thereof. The load times are the main offender here. They can be astoundingly long. Now I'm going to let you sit back and watch a normal load screen from when I die in the game until when I respawn. Take a look at this. Yeah, as if I'm going to do that, mate. But as you can see, it is pretty long, and over the course of the game, these can add up quite quickly. So that is a bit of a hindrance, of course. The game also hits 60 FPS. Sometimes 60, other times more like 20. The frame rate can be very inconsistent, which isn't a huge problem for a console pleb like myself, but it's still unfortunate to see, of course. Lastly, we have General Movement, who I served under when I was in the military, but enough about him. Moving around can sometimes be quite slow and cumbersome, especially when you're moving blocks around for puzzles, or trying to like knock through a wall or something. Maybe it's the Sonic fan in me, but being slower than a snail riding a turtle on the moon with lead strapped to each foot can be quite aggravating. All in all though, I have to say, it's a pretty enjoyable experience with lots of nice little references here and there and some very good ideas, if a little bit flawed in some areas. Mainly, it's gameplay mechanics. The story is there, but it's all done throughout notes and things that you hear from radio transmissions. So essentially, if you want to know things, you have to read. And if I've learned one thing from the Simpsons movie, it's that I was elected to lead, not to read. So for me, that's a bit of a downside, but for some people, reading all these notes and seeing pictures of dogs might be something that you're really into. Personally, I just like the dogs. Of course, I'm definitely going to try and get the Platinum Trophy for this game, and if you do get the game, I recommend you go for it as well. It's actually not too difficult, and at this moment of recording, only 60 people have the Platinum Trophy as of right now. Ooh. Let's try and get that to 62, shall we? Come on now. I'm sure we can do it. The Solus Project is available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And if you've got the stomach for it, the game also supports VR. Ooh. Now my body, however, does not support VR. Unless I want to see last night's dinner all over my lap. I leave you with that wonderful image. Goodbye, and take care. Also, it done off make the PS4's fans go wild.